You're now listening to Wealthy Sisters Radio Show. You're now listening to Wealthy Sisters with Deborah Hartnett.
Well, hello, great morning, and welcome to Wealthy Sisters Radio with a View. I'm Deborah Hartnett, your host, and I'm super excited as always to be here to share this moment with you. I'm truly grateful and humble by you taking the time out because you see, I do understand how valuable and precious time is. So I thank you again and again for joining us here every week at Wealthy Sisters. You know, we've been around for a long time, took a long hiatus, and excited to be back as of March. I almost said last month. This time is going by so fast. But today, you know, is going to be another great show. But before we get started, we got to remind you that we are sincere and truly committed to our twofold purpose. First, we must always make sure that we provide you with inspiration. So if the information you're getting is not inspirational to you, I wouldn't even watch it. But if it is, I encourage you to share it with others. We want to make sure not only that it's inspirational, but that it's also going to give you some practical knowledge. Right? Practical knowledge that you can apply to your life, to your business, and have immediate and long range impact as well, especially when we talk about what we're going to talk about today. And then our second purpose is to make sure that we provide that needed platform today to edify, to promote, and say thank you to the sisters for doing great big things. And not just the sisters, but the brothers too. And speaking of that, today is not like I should say it's going to be an incredible day because the sister that I have on today is literally my sister. Well, by spirit, right? I don't want to confuse you and say, y'all related? No, we are by spirit. I am thrilled and honored to call her a friend of mine. Matter of fact, let me not just hold her back. Let you see this great visual of my beautiful sister. That's right. She's none other than LaFern K. Batie, the founder and CEO of the Batie Group, the business consultant, the business strategist, award-winning entrepreneur, author. She's here again with us here on Wealthy Sisters Radio. LaFern, welcome, my sister.
Greetings.
Hey, guess what?
Greetings.
Greetings. I knew I had to put on red because I knew you were going to wear red today.
You knew it. It is such an honor and pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I'm thrilled to have you. You know, as I shared with our audience, our purpose is to make sure that we provide that practical information, that practical knowledge. And I could not think of a better person to discuss our topic of today. How does emotional intelligence impact a company's profitability? With the years of experience that you have, I know that you are poised to share information that people can use today in their business, in their life as well. But before we get that, even though you're my dearest friend, I know quite a bit about you. I don't know everything, right? Only God knows everything. But
That's
if you
right.
wouldn't mind sharing with our audience a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and how you got started on this beautiful journey. I like to say the ingredients that went into the recipe that we see today.
Absolutely. Well, again, it's an honor, Deborah, always being here with you and connecting with your audience. I grew up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I am the youngest of six. That explains some of my personality. As you know, as the youngest, you have to fight for your spot. But my mother is still quite active socially. She's 85 years old. She showed us how to serve and lead in the community. Neither of my parents had expertise in the corporate setting, but they were exceptional leaders in our community. My father ran his own business. He was a painter, a commercial painter. And I learned a lot about who I am and how to navigate life in West Ocean City, Maryland, in that community of love and nurturing. So that's where I come from. I live in Florida. I love serving. I believe it is my calling to be the secret sauce for brilliant leaders. And that's what I'm committed to do exceptionally every day.
Now, there seems to be a little bit of delay. I don't know if maybe
Yep.
you want to log off, come back in, or not sure if
Hmm.
that would help it. Because I don't want the
Okay.
audience to miss anything that you're sharing and what you have to share. So maybe if you'll do
I'll
that,
do that.
I'll
I'll
take a
do that.
moment just to let everybody know that we are on Black US.
Child introduction.
We're excited to share that Wealthy Sisters Radio with a View can also be found on blackusa.news. That's my brother Donnie Glover out of Baltimore. You definitely want to go to blackusa.news for all the latest in the news in our community, all not just a political, but business. There's a lot of information that you could use for your families and, like I said, for business as well. So check out blackusa.news there. You want to make sure that you subscribe to their channel here on YouTube as well and tune into, I mean, just a lot of information that they have, a lot of different broadcasts as well. And if you are someone that has a show or podcast, perhaps you might want to reach out to them to see if you too can be a part of their platform. Well, we're here today on Wealthy Sisters Radio Live with a View. My sister LaFern Batie is going to be dialing back in here in a moment. Had a few technical difficulties, and whenever that happens, I know it's going to be a great show, because anytime we have something powerful to say, it's always that enemy trying to keep it away. All right. So she's back, you guys. Hello, LaFern.
Hello, is this different?
It's a little better, but we're gonna make it work. I can hear you.
Okay,
I can
okay,
hear you, and I mean, and really, practically, a lot of our videos have that delayed time now, just with the differences in the different platforms and all of that. So sometimes, we are used to that. But as
okay.
you were saying, as far as growing up, everything about you, being the youngest, learning how to fight for your position, right? And just being able to see that great example that both your parents set for yourself, your mom still being very active, your father being an entrepreneur. How do you see that being a great platform for what we want to talk about today? I guess I should say, with the emotional intelligence, what is that? Is that just a buzzword? Is something cute that companies can look into when their profits are really flowing, or is that something that they really need to investigate during hard times?
It's interesting, Deborah, because we didn't call it emotional intelligence when we were coming up, but it's that
Mm-hmm.
ability to understand and navigate how you are receiving and responding to something or someone, but also recognizing another person's ability to respond and receive what you're sharing with them in whatever setting it's in. And it really speaks to how effective you are in communicating, especially during the most challenging time, perceiving, understanding. We used to call it discernment, discerning what's happening in certain spaces, how we as leaders can respond most effectively without adding the proverbial fuel to the fire. Yeah.
So in that example, I guess if you had an employee that, continues to be late to work, how you respond to that, is that determined or based on your level of emotional intelligence? Is that what be an example of that?
Absolutely. So I love that example that you're using. An employee who's late to work. How do you give that feedback? Do you attack the person or do you address the behavior? So it's the difference between when you're late to work, it impacts everyone else's contribution if we're in a process flow, or it impacts our ability to deliver what we've promised to our customer in a timely manner. That speaks to the impact. But if I say, well, you're late, what's wrong with you? Why can't you get here on time? That is what may be perceived as an attack on my person. So we always say to leaders, how do you focus on the problem, the challenge, and the impact that that problem or challenge is having versus attacking the person? You can address the behaviors without belittling the person. And so in part, recognizing that and not saying, you know what, this is just how I am. I'm just going to say what needs to be said, because that shows a limited amount of emotional intelligence or a lack of it. I'm just, you know how I am. I deliver how I deliver. I'm just going to be a straight no chaser.
Shoot straight
Those
shooter.
are behaviors. Yeah, I'm a straight shooter. Those are behaviors that we must be mindful of when we're engaging with others, and how that impacts performance. And performance, we know, impacts profitability.
And that's when we talk about those measurable results. You know, that those companies that do take a close look or have some type of system in place or a gauge, help me with the correct terminology, to measure the emotional intelligence, not just when you have the workforce, but even when you're hiring employees. And I want to
Yes.
just say this. Please, if you hear us talking about this right now, you have a small business, don't chime off, don't tune off, stay close, because this is
Yes.
also, very important to small business owners as well. So if you could just kind of talk about, LaFern, we're talking about, we just mentioned some of the behaviors, but when we are looking to hire employees, because of course we want to make sure they have the skills that we need for the jobs that we require them to do, right? We want to make sure a lot of times that they have the experience. You hear people all the time, well, I don't have any experience. I couldn't get hired. You might hear a college
Right.
graduate say that, like, which is why we encourage them to do the internships so that they can have the experience in all of the education as well when it's time for them to graduate. But why is it important for employers to measure that? And how do you measure someone's level of emotional intelligence in an interview or through reading their resumes? Are there some types of systems out there or
Absolutely.
tests? Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Well, and I say every assessment is a snapshot. So you have
Okay.
EQ, which is normally what we refer to in the development space, the leadership development space, as
Okay.
emotional intelligence. We talk about it in terms of EQ, but there
Okay.
are simple questions. Give me an example of a time you've had a challenging conversation with someone and tell me how you navigated it. That gives them an opportunity to share a real life situation and give you insight to whether they dance around it, whether they have a discipline. So whether it's practice, they know how to approach it, maybe give it time and I'll step back and I'll revisit it, or whether they change their tone, or whether they ask questions versus giving directives, how a person navigates challenging situations, or if there's change that happens in an organization. Tell me about a time you've been reassigned and you didn't want to be reassigned and how you navigated it. Tell me about a time when you've been given critical feedback, or tell me about a time when someone has critiqued your performance and it didn't feel comfortable. How did you navigate that? When we give individuals opportunities to share what they've done in real life, those are our best assessments of EQ. There are assessments that give you scenarios and which one would you choose, or which is more preferable, or which aligns most with who you are. You can use those types of assessments to get a good baseline. And some organizations honestly use them to filter out who they want to talk with, whether they tell you you're being filtered out for that purpose or not. But I want to go to something you said about the small business space, because often we hear, well, I don't work in a big corporate arena, or I'm launching or running, or I've been growing a small business. It becomes even more critical that you have some gauge of how individuals navigate, because the impact on your business is much more direct than it is on the company with 5, 10, 100,000 employees. The 100,000 employees, that's a drop in a larger body of water. In your company, it could be felt by you and your clients much more readily. So someone may come with you and they want to collaborate, or they can offer a service. And I want you to think
Right.
about partners, collaborators, contractors, the same way that we think about employees.
Right.
Think about it as an opportunity to screen. Don't just accept someone into your business without understand how they're going to interface with you and your customers.
That's right. That's right. Because they're representing you as well. And
Absolutely.
especially, I'm thinking like just something as small as a doctor's office, or even just, I mean, I have used that myself. And just as you said, engaging with other contractors, because, we hire a lot of, partner with a lot of independent um, business owners. But just as a matter, if you want to host someone, even on this show, a lot of times dealing with their what do they call them, the gatekeepers.
Yes.
Those, I mean,
Yes.
those gatekeepers really,
Yes.
really, I guess, set the tone for how you expect that person to be, and
Yes.
that has made me make some decisions before, because I'm wondering
Yes.
if
Well,
you're
Deborah,
hiring this person. Yes, go ahead.
you mentioned that we were in the same office space for 14 years. And at the end of this agreement, I will move office spaces, because the individuals that are part of our office team, but they're hired by the management company that runs that space,
Uh
they've
huh.
changed, and they
Uh
no
huh.
longer reflect what's important to us when our clients
Right.
come into that space. And I started
Right.
thinking, okay, I can try to bargain with them to get new people, but I can also look at my options. And I had
Right.
an opportunity to meet with the space where they greeted us the way we want our clients to be greeted. They're not
Right.
uh, they're not caught up in some negative emotion that our clients have to figure out, how do I navigate this? And so
Yes, it's too
14
much work.
years, yeah, 14 years, we're done. It's that important to me.
It is. It is important. Now we talked about when you mentioned some of the assessments that are there. Are
Mhm.
these something that you should hire when we're talking about a business owner or a corporation? Are these self done assessments, or are they systems? So can they hire someone like yourself to come
Yeah,
in
yeah,
and do this?
yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because even in some of the largest organizations that we serve, we find that they will have some consulting organization administer the assessments, give them the reports, and help them be able to determine whether or not that person aligns with what they need in the organization. And I don't say fit, because I believe fit forces you to be who you're not, but
Oh,
alignment and
yeah.
understanding belonging says I can bring whoever I am into the organization, and it's not just like you, but it's valuable to you. Yeah.
So as far as we're talking about the profits now, we're
Mhm.
talking about the emotional intelligence, how that really does affect. a company's profitability. We've talked about
Absolutely.
that there are assessments that we can use for current employees and in assessments when we're hiring in an interviewing process, or even as far as the applying process. And
Absolutely.
how do we what's the proof? Give us some documentation or some facts to that entrepreneur that might still be pushing back, saying, oh, that's that soft skill stuff, that malarkey. You know, the people feel about what we're talking about today. Share some information on that, please.
Absolutely. I'll start here. Soft skills are essential skills. If you don't know how to talk to someone, and I'm going to break down the communication piece even smaller. If you do
Okay.
not know how to talk with someone in a respectful tone or engage with a colleague in a way that says, I appreciate you. I'm not talking about constantly having to stroke someone's ego, but something as simple as asking for their feedback versus always giving them the direction around how to
Direction.
do something.
Okay.
Trusting that you hired them for a reason. When are you going to allow that person to do the job? But if I roll it back to something really basic, communication, the language we use to engage with others, and whether or not that language is perceived as being respectful. I was talking with a client a couple of days ago, and this client went to a new organization, and immediately, because of the language, not necessarily the language that was directed at this person, but the language in the workspace, colleagues, leaders, this individual says, nope, this feels toxic to me. I am going back to where I came from because this is not the tone and tenor that says respect in the workplace. Language, the names that are used, the using expletives, how people perceive that, especially when you're directing that language toward them or their customers. There are some people who don't understand that your customers may be silent and your employees may be silent, but when they leave, it costs you. Let me give you an
Right.
example. How much does it cost to replace an employee? I asked this
Oh.
question of a client a couple weeks ago. How much does it cost? So it doesn't just cost whatever I'm to pay that person, employee, contractor, whatever I'm going to pay that person that's different from what the current person makes. It costs productivity that's lost when the person who has knowledge and experience is pulled out of the workforce. It costs the morale that's decreased when other people say, you know what? I'm not even going to give them my best. I'm going to do just enough to get along. That costs. It costs you productivity. It costs because when your customers are face to face with your employees and they are receiving something that's less than excellent service, they say silently and sometimes verbally, I'm leaving and I'm not coming back and I'm not going to send anyone else here. But sometimes they're vocal and they use social media to talk about their issues and challenges with you. And that costs. So it costs you to hire someone, the overlap in decreased productivity, having to train someone, it costs you an overtime, having to cover that time. You might have to bring in a temporary employee, which can be more expensive sometimes. There are significant costs associated with one employee leaving. So I challenge any leader in an organization, whether you are an employee or whether you are the CEO of your own business, understand how much it costs you in the ability or inability to produce something, service, product, content, when you're trying to replace a body with another productive individual. That's money. That's a direct hit to your bottom line.
That's the best measuring stick right there that you just shared. I mean, when you think about, you said the cost, how much does it cost to replace? And you start
Hmm.
listing in the productivity, the morale. I mean, that's like you leave a rotten apple in the fruit bowl, and what happens to the rest of the fruit there, or any,
Yes.
not even just you just had apples in there. That one bad apple can affect if you've got bananas or mangoes or what have you. That can really cost in that production because you're not getting the results that you need. And
That's
if
right.
you're talking about a face-to-face customer service where they have to interact with your customers, I love how you talked about the silent because I know that's kind of my style. I am
Yeah.
not one to, I don't like to do negative reviews. If I have
Hmm.
to give a review, I love giving great reviews, celebrating. If it's something that I was not happy with, I just don't speak about it. And like you said, I won't go back and I won't tell anyone else to go there, right? So that's a
Exactly.
great impact on that bottom line there. So if you look at what we're talking about with a company and they're saying, okay, all right, well maybe this is making sense, but I don't really have time.
Hmm.
I don't have
Yeah.
time to implement this. I don't even know how do I even do this? I don't know what y'all talking about. Today, I'm trying to get somebody to work because that's where everybody are today. You know, everybody's right in that space. A lot of companies, shall I say, are just
Right.
hiring people that they wouldn't hire,
Right.
before. I heard great news of someone that a mutual family member of a friend of a family member of a mutual friend was just hired as a manager with a felon. You wouldn't before the pandemic. You wouldn't have heard that, But
Right.
Wendy's hired him as an assistant manager. So this is where people are, and that's good news for this person. But again, how does a person begin or a company begin a program, implementing a program for measuring emotional intelligence within their
You
company?
know, I say start with something really basic. Go back to, especially, well, if you don't have core values established, which indicates the lifeblood of why your business exists, how you want to be seen and experienced by your employees and by your customers. Articulate for yourself what's most important to us in this business. What are our core values? What are our non negotiables? So if it's service, how do we administer that service? If it's um, if it's excellence, how does that excellence look? But start with key elemental core values that are important to you, and then determine how you're going to ensure those you bring into the organization or those who are already there, because you can reset. How do you ensure that they align with those values? Through questions you ask them. Bring somebody, if you don't know how to do it, bring somebody in to help you scope something really simple. It can be 4 or 5 points that you act about in an interview to make sure your employees align with your values.
Well, you talk about the core values. Um, I think that is really important. And I think well, in your experience, I know you've seen companies, corporations that
Mhm.
did not have clear core values in place,
Yes.
right? So, again, I don't want the small business owner to feel like this is not a conversation for you. But as for a small business owner or those companies, those core values, how important are they to establish, and should they be written down? Is it something that only the owner should know, or what's that? I'm happy you brought that up.
Yeah. Core values reflect your organization's personality and culture. So it says, here's who we are, and here's what's important to us. It's important that you write them down because you want other people to understand who you are. So, for example, I'll set aside the company for a second. If you say, LaFern, tell me what's most important to you. I think the things that if you take them away from me, it's hard for me to even breathe. Communication is important to me. Family is important to me. We have 8 core values in our company. But if I tell you communication is important to me, then I set the expectation that I'm going to focus on communicating effectively. If I tell you family is important to me, then you'll be able to see that in how I give time and attention to my family. I can't tell family is important if I'm never there for my family. So your core values indicate what's important to you on paper, but your behavior demonstrates what's true relative to your core values. It's important for others to see them, to know them, but for you to align your behaviors in your company around your core values.
I like that. The core values, you say, is what's on paper, and the behavior is demonstrating what you put on paper about those.
And that's right.
And so go ahead. What were you going to say? I don't want to interrupt you.
And that shapes your culture. So, we're in this era where everybody is talking about culture, where culture reflects the way you think, the way you behave, the way you engage, what's acceptable, what's unacceptable. And if I take your culture, I compare it to what you say is important in your core values, it should be a marriage. It should be seamless. But how I behave, regardless of what my culture statement is, how I behave is culture. How I engage, those are my values. So everything we say about who we are desiring and aspiring to be, it has to be evident. Otherwise, it's just words on paper. It's just aspiration.
And important fact here that you're talking about when you said everyone is focused, and we hear the word culture more than we've ever heard before in our lives now. But culture is not just, from what you're saying, you're reminding us, it is not just ethnicity or sexuality, your religion, your faith. We're talking about your working environment, your company culture, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That
how
takes
you
its
lead.
own life of its own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
you could have someone working in the same industry, like an accountant, working for these large firms, out here, and they can leave one firm and go to another and find an entirely different culture, just like you used in the example with one of your clients. That I would imagine stayed in the same space, went to a different company, and the culture was totally different.
Totally different. You can sense culture if you stay tuned in from the time you set foot on an organization's property, whether that be physical property or virtual property. You can click on a link. And so I'm going to go to something you said, because we talk about culture a lot in this space where we mention diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have my thoughts about that, but we talk about it. And if you tell me that having different perspectives and experiences and thought processes is critical to who you are as an organization, when I click on your leadership page, I expect to see it reflected. And a lot of times that's not what we see. And then it takes time, or maybe another 10 years. And I contend, if there's anything that a global health crisis has taught us, it's that we can do whatever we desire to do when we think it's important enough to do it. We can shift our businesses on a dime if we think it's important enough. Yeah.
Right. And going back to what you said, that is the core values it should be a marriage, like you said. And in that
A marriage.
example, if you're saying that you are including or a champion, excuse me, of diversity, equality, and you go to the board of directors or you go to the leadership and you don't see that, then that's an example of what you were saying, the conflict in the core
Yes.
values of what. And so I
Right.
can imagine again going back to our original question, how does the emotional intelligence impact a company's profitability? So that, and you mentioned some of those things that it can affect the morale, right? So in that
Yes.
example,
Yes.
you're having what talk about how that example, I don't want, you're the expert. I'm just surmising here, as we say down in the South. But how does that affect that or correlate with the morale and the
Yeah.
profitability
So
in what we're saying?
if I think about the employee who goes above and beyond, if I need you there, we have a project or a program deadline, or we have a deliverable for a customer, and it's just going to require us to work all weekend. The employee who is motivated, that internal, that motivation says, I'm dedicated to this. I desire it. It's it connects with feelings. If my motivation is high, it is likely that I will move what's important to me on the weekends to make room for you. If my motivation is low, then I might even make you think I'm going to be there. And on Saturday morning, I call in sick. And what can you say about a sick employee? Well, we know that there's some boundaries around how you can ask and what you can ask for relative to illness. But even for employees who show up, morale, how much effort are they going to give? Are they going to do just enough to get by? Or are they going to give so much that it contributes to your ability to set yourself apart and be a leader in the competitive path? This whole notion about the great resignation, the news is the great resignation is not new. Employees have been leaving jobs for decades, except some of them stay on the job after they've left your job. That's morale decreased. Something's changed. They will
So
do
you're
as
saying
little as they can. Yeah.
a song comes to mind. You know how we are about music. So is that your mind is what is it? Your body's here with me, but your mind is on the other
But
side
your
of
body's on
town.
the other side of town.
Is that was
Yeah.
powerful what you said. You said your employees leave. What did you say? They leave. Say that again. They leave.
So they leave, but some of them stay on the job.
But
And when
so
we're looking at when we're looking at the Great Resignation, we're looking at
yeah.
people who've left. No, a lot of them left a long time ago. They just stayed
Yes.
there and continued to collect a check. That
Yes.
sometimes, many times, is a reflection of unhealthy culture, which impacts morale, which impacts motivation to give you not just the basics.
Well, I tell you, if you are just joining us today, we are here with my beautiful sister, LaFern K. Batie of the Batie Group. We're talking about how does emotional intelligence impact your company's profitability. Yes, we're here on Wealthy Sisters Radio with The View. And I just need to take an informational break. You see her smiling. You see her smiling because she is one of the featured stories here in this book. I mean, I am not biased because my name is on it. I'm humbled, truly, sincerely, that I had an opportunity to share the space and time with these powerful sisters on here. Wealthy Sisters, powerful personal stories proving that you can do it too. LaFern, as you can see, is in this book here. I encourage you to go to Amazon.com. You can go to wealthysisters.com and purchase this book. You go to Amazon, you will get it. As well as there, you know how you get your Prime delivery. You can get it a lot quicker. But I encourage you to get this book. Mother's Day is coming up. Get a copy for your mother. If you got a daughter that is a mother, get a copy for your daughter. Get a copy for those young ladies, because again, this is about our purpose here at Wealthy Sisters, is to provide that platform to show, because there's nothing like visuals, right, LaFern? Nothing.
That's right. Nothing.
And we have to, it's just, when I think about the things that I see in the media, I don't watch. I have completely unplugged myself. I did it years ago, but really, especially today, you know, just the things that we see that portray Black women, right? And the only thing that you think that we could do to have some level of this worldly measured success is to be an entertainer, you know? But that's not true. There are so many women out here, like in the book, like LaFern doing, she's very humble, but you would not know the level of her business. The corporations that she interacts with, that call on her, that ask her for advice. Boeing, not just to name a few. These are the type of women, the stories that are in this book. You want to be able to get this book so you can read them. You can be inspired. You can be encouraged. And you can see that you too can do what they're doing in your space, right? Let that be an example for you. So again, get that book. Back to my beautiful sister, you know, LaFern. We're talking about this emotional intelligence. We talked about how a company can begin implementing a program if they don't have a program in place to measure this. We talked about why they really need to do that for the profitability, the morale, perfect examples that you use there. Some of the soft skills that are centered around the emotional intelligence. And you said in your leadership development space, is you all use the phrase EQ. What does that stand for?
Yes.
I wanted to ask you that earlier.
And that's what is generally referred to as the emotional intelligence. So you'll see an EQ assessment, or you'll hear emotional intelligence referred to oftentimes as EQ. Here's an easy way to tune in to how emotional intelligence, or I'll strip the language, how behaviors influence culture, influence employee morale and motivation. Start tuning into and becoming aware of how individuals in your organization engage. Just step back and be students. If you're too close to what's happening, have someone else come in and just do an objective observation. Tell me what you see. How does it feel? Tell me from a health perspective whether it feels good. Be mindful of how you and others in your organization respond, react. If someone brings you a problem, or if they make a suggestion, how do you respond? Do you receive it? Or do you reject it? Or do you feel like you're the only one who comes with the best solutions in your organization? Think about some of the mistakes you've made. And how can you avoid making those same mistakes? Or what can those mistakes teach you? That starts to tell you who you are. Whether or not you're even willing to identify your mistakes tells you who you are. Whether or not you're willing to identify what you've learned from your mistakes tells us as much about who we are as the successes that we have. These are small ways, simple ways, practical ways to start assessing organizationally what your company is, who your company is, and from an individual perspective, who you are as a leader. Tune in during meetings. Watch how people interact and engage. Start paying attention during project meetings. When people leave, listen to what they're telling you. There's so many ways we can start learning who we are as organizations. But organizations don't run by themselves. Leaders are responsible for running them. So tune into you, tune into those who are working alongside you. And if it really feels difficult, find somebody to support you in that space. We are only as effective as we can be when we're willing to learn and grow and do things differently. Otherwise, we become stagnant. And we know stagnation leads to death.
It does. It does. Oh man, that is good. When you're thinking about, you just said so much. When you're tuning into you as the leader and being willing to grow, right? Being willing to grow, to advance. This, again, leadership development. I'm thinking of small business owners that, and when I say small, we want to qualify what small is. Small by the SBA, I think, is up to 20 million. I forgot what the number of employees, 100 employees, I think, under that. You can go to the website and find out how they determine that. And even at those levels, I have seen the leadership not understanding the importance of leadership development, right? Because now we're talking about how we're engaging, how we're communicating, how we're interacting, how does it affect the morale? And you just brought it right back on that leader.
That's right.
So
it begins.
Go ahead.
It begins with us as leaders. So something I often try to do for myself, my own development, is I pay attention to my behaviors. Maybe not what I say outwardly, but I pay attention to what's going on in my body. So if someone brings me a problem, or a project is late and we have a deadline, and I try to be mindful of making sure our deadlines don't bump up against our clients' deadlines, but we have a deadline or something happens and all of a sudden our plan needs to be revamped. What's going on inside of my body? Because I can mask it, but I still need to be aware of it, because my feelings internally tell me what's really happened. So do I feel myself getting upset? Do I feel myself getting quiet or short? Do I feel that funny feeling in my stomach where it's like, oh, I want to say something? And then being able to navigate my behavior accordingly. So I can't always say or do what I'm thinking, because that would be detrimental to the company and to our clients.
Right.
But I can have conversations with myself or with a colleague or my own executive coach around how do I work through the inner part of letting go, allowing someone else to grow and have room to shine, or allowing someone else to make mistakes, but knowing that's also a part of that person's growth, and allowing myself as a leader to be in the background and allow other team members to step out and develop their skills and capabilities. So a lot of it begins inside, and that's not easy. When we're looking at development, I encourage leaders to find a partner, somebody you can trust, somebody who is not going to cater to you, but they're going to care for you, but they're going to tell you the truth in love. Find somebody that you can have that relationship with so you can become an effective leader. And when you're a more effective leader, you're more supportive of other leaders around you also being more effective. And then they serve their employees more effectively. And those employees serve your customers more effectively. And the ripple effect just gets wider and wider. But it begins with who you are as a leader and knowing that our work never ends. We must be willing to invest in ourselves and work on ourselves so we can lead, which means we serve effectively.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And leadership. You talked about it was something that you that made me think of again with our whole topic being around how does emotional intelligence affect or impact a company's profitability, right? We've talked about all these things involving with employees, how it does affect that. Now we just touched on the importance of the leadership and how we need to self-assess, right? To make sure, and some of the things that you do. And this is so important because when we're talking about all of the efforts that we're putting into building our businesses, and we are not allowing opportunities for those on our team that we've hired to grow, to develop, for fear, whatever the fears are. They might go somewhere else, they might start their own, or what have you. But this brings to my attention the importance of succession planning.
Yes.
Why we need to do that. Because why would you build something and then we all are going to go and transpire. We are going to expire. We all have that date. And what happens to all of the work that you put into that company? We see this all the time that, either the company is, in a good case, is being sold, but in some cases it just dissolves when that person is gone. If you are that person, you are the sole person, the one that has to do it all.
Yeah, that's a challenge for many leaders, especially when we lead our own enterprises. Here's what I want everyone to think about. If you are the single point of success, you are also the single point of failure. And if you're okay with being the single point of failure, then accept, live with it, understand the consequences of it. But if you want something that might not even be in jeopardy when our lives as we know them expire, but even if you become ill, if the business stops because you're sick, then what? Who else can pick up the mantle? Do you even have contingency partners who may not work with you in your business every day, especially as entrepreneurs, who can fill in? If you can't cover the client, they can be there. That you have a circle of people around you, and it might be a very small circle. They can be there to help backfill when you're not available, so that you can still keep your service to the client top of mind, at the top of your list. How does it work if you're not there? What's your plan? I am so committed to strategy that I don't even sometimes know how to articulate it. In the absence of a roadmap, which is what your strategy is, you are bound to be off path, off track. And when you are off track, it costs you money because it costs you time and effort and energy. So be proactive. Ask yourself, you don't have to have the answer today. What's in place outside of me, or me and a limited few? What's my plan B? And how much time and attention do I give to it before it lands on my lap and now I have to handle it? Take time every year at a minimum to reassess and reevaluate your strategy. That's extremely critical. It was the difference between me being in business for a year or 2 years and me being in business for 17 years. And in the most challenging economic times, we've set ourselves apart because we had a roadmap. We were thinking about it in advance. 2008, business boomed. 2020, business boomed. But that does not happen in a vacuum. Have a plan, have a roadmap.
Have a plan, have a roadmap. Well, I think that's a great segue into this retreat, your annual retreat that you're hosting. And the
Absolutely.
title of it alone speaks volumes. The Unveiling Retreat. Share a little bit about that and who would be the perfect attendee. Who is this designed
Yeah.
for? And why did you create this retreat? I mean, and there's people are doing all types of events. And what's so unique and special about the Unveiling
Yeah.
Retreat?
In 2013, I was compelled. My spirit was turning around how to get people together to not be reactive and responsive to what any organization decided to do with them, for them, anything that could impact them. And I knew that the difference in my career journey was being mindful and intentional around creating a strategy. Yeah, the company had its plan, but my plan, the one that I had, the one that was given to me, was most important. And that's how it started. I wanted to bring people together where they could take a weekend to think through, what do I want to do next? How do I want to elevate? What do I do well? What are some of my challenges, capabilities needed to overcome those challenges? What are some of my options and opportunities? What results am I expecting? And then how do I measure my effectiveness? And so I took what I learned in the Fortune 500 space around strategy and execution, the way companies use that process to make billions and trillions of dollars. And I brought it to small business owners. And so today, it is predominantly entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial leaders, those who are inside of organizations who want to have a clear plan in place, don't want to be reactive. They want to own their journeys, and they're willing to invest in it in a space of brilliant, amazing leaders from around the globe. And we do it on the beach. I love the water. I'm selfish about that. Take them to the beach, and for 3 days we work, and then we give them room to relax and rejuvenate. That's important to me, to watch others own their journeys and take control of them, because I've seen way too many people fall victim to an organization making a decision about them that cost them their wealth, their health, and their families. We get choices. And the Unveiling Retreat is a powerful choice that leaders make every year. That's their annual retreat.
Oh, wow. And that's the timing of the retreat in the last quarter of the year. I know you did that, being the strategist that you are. I know
Yeah.
that is to prepare for the next year. So when is
Absolutely.
the retreat this year?
The retreat this year is in October, which is the year we always have it, the month we always have it. And what we're doing this year is we're going, I think it's October 28th through the 30th. And we go Friday, Saturday, and half day on Sunday. We provide amazing meals, the accommodations. I call it our sanctuary for the weekend. It's a beautiful space. They treat us well. They must, in order for us to come back. And it's just an exceptional opportunity for you to get in, engage, grow, have a plan, and feel like you can relax, breathe, and know where you're heading, regardless of what headwinds come toward you in the next year. We do it in October, so you don't hit the ground January 1st like so many other people trying to execute a plan that should start before January 1st.
Right. So they'll be ready. They want to go to your website. We have it there at the bottom of the screen, the BatieGroup.com. And there's a link on there that talks about the Unveiling Retreat. Definitely, I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to attend, God willing, inshallah. It'll be this year. For sure, anytime my sister is sharing this type of information, and I mean, what a privilege to be able to be there in that intimate setting where you can have your plans. You can have LaFern K, Batie help you with that direction that you're wanting to go. And it's about that investment into you, because if you don't invest into your leadership and development and growth, as you heard her say, your company, you will be stagnant. Therefore, your company is stagnant. Therefore, there is no life in still water. What do you see? The murkiness, right? I'm a visual person. You see the gnats forming and flying. It's the green algae, all those things. That's what you see in stagnated water. You don't want your business to do that. You want to be able to invest in yourself. So I, look forward to you investing in yourself through the Unveil and Retreat there. Well, I tell you what, the time is going by so fast. My sister, will you come back again?
Absolutely. For you, anytime.
Oh, thank you. I pray that this information that you've heard today has been something that's been very impactful for you. I pray that it has inspired you enough that you recognize the value that we are putting into this platform for you. And the only way it is going to be able to continue is for you to continue to share it. Like, subscribe, and share. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Just do it. Just do it right now. I mean, we're starting our massive advertising campaign at the end of this month, but no better way can you advertise them through the word of mouth. So again, like, subscribe, share, go to thebatiegroup.com, visit, check out the Unveil and Retreat, and join us next week. Next week, when I'm so super excited to have a repeat visitor, another Gina Page of the AfricanAncestry.com. Let me let you get a great visual of her. One moment. Oh, right here. Here she is. Here, all my popping away there. Again, that's Dr. Gina Page. So excited for her to now have her doctorate. Gina Page with the AfricanAncestry.com. This company, she's an industry pioneer. They developed, she along with her co-founder, they have this incredible way for you, for us as African Americans, to dial into the exact tribe. Nobody else is doing this. The exact tribe, not the region, but the exact tribe to where you come from. So tune in next week. I guarantee you it's going to be another great show. And with all of that said, we continue to wish you and yours the best of everything great. Thank you for all of you all who are listening in. Thank you for your support. And my sister LaFern, again, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Wealthy Sistas Radio. Thank you for joining us. Catch the full hour encore Thursdays 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern and 24/7 at wealthysistasradio.com. The opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of our hosts, staff, or partners of Wealthy Sistas Radio.